Hi there, welcome to another session here on the book of Proverbs. In our last session, we finished at Proverbs chapter 6, verse 19, and we are back on the whole subject of adultery. We looked at it quite extensively in chapter 5, and it's hitting us again in chapter 6 and 7, so we're going to go through it one more time. Okay, for those who have maybe come across this the first time, I'm using a software which is called eSword. It is free. You can download it from the internet. Just go to Google, type in sword, so like the weapon SWORD, and it'll Google or DuckDuckGo or any of the other search engines are going to take you to where the software is, and you can download it. You have to download different modules, and you can have lots of Christian books, Christian commentaries. I'm just looking at the commentaries on here. So there's Schofield, Preacher's Homiletical, F.B. Meyer, Matthew Henry's concise commentary, the full commentary by Matthew Henry, Kyle and Delitzsch, Hawker, Expositor's Bible, Darby, loads and lots of people. There are also books you can download, and there's a lot of. It's a marvelous resource. And the beauty is you can have different Bible translations, even go directly into the Greek and Hebrew, and just do some real intensive Bible study. The unfortunate thing is that some of the modern versions, you would have to pay for them. They are part of the premium package. But there's a lot of stuff which is free, and you don't have to pay a penny for it. The version I'm using here is the modern King James version. I just had to look it up, and I think in the past I said it was sort of written up in the 50s. Wrong. I checked it out. It was put together by Reverend Green, and it was done from 1962 all the way to 1998, I think. So there are different revisions and versions. I'm not quite sure the vision that is used here. The Reverend, by the looks of it, has made it free to the public. And his aim was to look at the King James English and to still keep the translation as literal as possible, but to use modern words, English words. If you are bilingual, you know that, or not even bilingual, if you are a little bit older, you know that language changes all the time and words change their meaning all the time. And so the way people spoke in 1611 is somewhat different to the way people are speaking today, even though both is English. The way we communicate, the way the orthography is changed, like the way we write and things like that, is without any doubt is there, and it needs to be accounted for, and that's what he has done. Also, in the King James, there were a couple of phrases which were kind of paraphrased from Hebrew to English, and he went back into the original text to try and correct this. So it's certainly good work, and certainly worthwhile to check it out. And from the modern translations, the modern English which are available, you've got both. You've got a good amount of precision and faithfulness to the original text, but also a use of modern English, which is a bit easier to understand, and you don't have to train yourself in 1611 language. Okay, let's move on with this. So I'm going to go between two different versions. One is the ERV, and I have to hover on this. It doesn't come up. It's the easy to read version. I'm going to look at that one as well, and then toggle between the ERV and the MKJV, the modern King James version. Okay, so we're going to start off with 20, verse 20. I'm just going to start reading through it, and then we cover the verse. We cover, not verse by verse, but sort of paragraph by paragraph. One thing I want you to bear in mind, I mean, we've looked at the whole subject of adultery in chapter 5. We're going to look at it again. Probably from a modernist view or 21st century view, it's a little bit off, because it just talks about the man who was seduced by a woman, and the man paying for it quite heavily. And some people might say it's a bit sexist and you should have it in, both ways around and things like that. But one thing, and I think the Bible is clear, and even though we're living in a generation where the distinction between man and woman has become somewhat blurry, there's a very clear distinction. And if in doubt, just look in the mirror early in the morning or late at night, and you can see that there are distinct biological differences, but there are also differences in the way we act, we communicate, we deal with one another, we interact, and the modern society, I think, has got it totally wrong. That gender is a social construct. It's not. It's a divine construct. God has designed man to be a man and woman to be a woman. Both are very, very different, and together they complement one another. I have to think about one rabbi, and that sort of highlights it. And it's obviously he's trying to interpret the Torah, and Genesis, where God says He has made the man and woman. He's made man, and He's made a man and woman. And his interpretation was that man is not complete unless man is married. Only in marriage you find the completion of the whole concept, the construct of man. And again, it's English is a limitation there. German would be a bit easier. We've got the term Mensch, which could be a woman or a man. And you would translate that he has made Mensch, this man, meaning either. And then completion is only found if a woman and a man come together and complement one another. And it's a very nice, beautiful picture to describe the mystery and the secret of marriage, that you find fulfillment in one another, and that only as a man and a woman become one flesh, they complete this union, complete this existence, and get closer to a fullness of their existence in loving dependence on one another, in supporting one another, in wanting to give to one another. And that is sort of a little bit of a Jewish concept which is there, and this is what we need to bear in mind when we look at these texts. There's a biblical concept. It is very different to the 21st century concept. I'm convinced that, I'm not sure how long the show is going on, but if it were to go on for another generation, I'm convinced that the next generation is looking down on us and thinking, are these people crazy? What have they done? And there will be, I'm convinced there will be some sort of renaissance of femininity and masculinity, and to the best of its potential. Is there going to be another generation? I doubt it. I think the Bible is pretty clear. We see the convergence of all the signs, and I'm talking about end times now in eschatology. We are seeing what is going on. We are seeing what is going on in societies, in science, and things which are happening behind the scenes are becoming more and more visible in public, and if God doesn't intervene soon, if God doesn't bring the whole thing to an end soon, we'll bring ourselves to an end. And I think this is pretty clear of what we can see and the way things are going, the way things are unfolding. And I believe that I'm not sure it's either my mother's generation is the last generation, or my generation is the last generation. It depends on how you look on it and how you interpret the scripture. But we are not far off. That's for sure. Again, let's have a look at the adultery. So try and get all the preconceived ideas out of your head for a moment, and just look at what the text is saying. I need to also make the point that when you read in the Bible the whole concept of adultery, there are several different aspects which are described here. One of them is that the typical act. You've got a man who's married, who's promised to be with his wife forever, until death do part, and he just strays away, and he goes with a woman, with a prostitute, and breaks his trust, and really puts a strain on the relationship. And the New Testament says that in those cases, you are free to divorce. And so that is pretty bad. There's also the concept of adultery where a man goes and sleeps with another man's wife, and the other man is going to be really angry, naturally. that is his, intimacy is being violated. His life and everything is being violated, and it's a big problem. But then there are also sort of ideas of adultery which can take place in your heart, where you lust after another woman, or if you're a woman, after another man. And it's a big problem. You shouldn't be doing this. It will happen. It will happen that we will be tempted, but we need to resist this temptation and overcome and stay faithful to our other half as best as we can, to the best of our ability. And then there's also an image of sin in general. That as we engage in sin, that it's almost like a concept of adultery. We are walking away from the straight and narrow path. And then the next one is that if we are abandoning God and we are not putting God first in our life, that is figuratively an act of adultery. So we've got all these images and issues which come from the Bible, and when you read this text, you can sort of read all these different scenarios into this. The walk into sin, the walk into to abandon God and to not have God first in your life, but also the literal act, which is going to give you a lot of problems. Okay, let's go to the text and read through it, and then we'll comment a little bit on it. My son, keep your father's commandments, and do not forsake the law of your mother. Bind them upon your heart forever, and tie them around your neck. When you go, it shall lead you, and when you sleep, it shall keep you, and when you are awake, it shall talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light. It reproves of instruction are the way of life, to keep you from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her take you with her eyelids, for by means of a harlot a man comes to a piece of bread, and another man's wife will hunt for the precious life. Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So is he who goes to his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. They do not despise a thief, if he deals to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he is found, he shall restore sevenfold, and shall give all the goods of his house. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He who does it destroys his own soul. He shall get a wound and dishonor, and his shame shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not take any ransom, nor will he be willing if you multiply the gifts. Chapter 7. My son, keep my words and store up my commandments within you. Keep my commandments and live, and keep my law as the pupil of your eye. Bind them upon your fingers, write them upon the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your kinsman, so that they may keep you from the strange woman, from the stranger who flutters with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my lattice, and I saw among the simple ones, among the youth, a young man with no understanding, passing through the street near her corner. And he went away to her house, and in the twilight, in the evening, in the dark night, and behold, there a woman met him, with the dress of a harlot, and a guarded heart. She is loud and stubborn, her feet do not stay in her house, nor she is outside, nor in the streets, and lies in wait at every corner. And she caught him and kissed him, and with a hard face she said to him, I have peace offerings with me, today I have paid my vows. So I came out to meet you, earnestly to seek your face. I have found you. I have checked my bed with coverings, with striped cloth of Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us delight ourselves with the caresses, for my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of silver with him, and will come home at the day of the full moon. With her much fair speech she caused him to yield, and with the fluttering of her lips she forced him. He goes after her immediately, like an ox goes to the slaughter, or like a fool to the correction of the stocks, until a dart strikes through his liver, as a bird hastens to the snare, and does not know that it is for his soul. And now listen to me, sons, and attend to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not go astray in her path. For she has cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the rooms of death. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm gonna obviously I covered everything in chapter 5 about adultery and prostitutes and the problem we have there. But let's go through it one more time, and it's been mentioned again. It's been mentioned a second time, so it must be important. The first thing I had to think about was that I'm talking to people who are living in the 21st century, and sort of the whole thing, one night stands or something like that is pretty normal, and it's kind of accepted, and it's a normal lifestyle. And you listen to some, even on television, on reality shows, you listen to some women, and and they start boasting about the, I'm not sure what they call the man toll or something, like how many men they've slept with, and you hear like ridiculous figures like 100 men, or hundreds or whatever. Some can't keep count, some don't remember all the men they've slept with, and it's really, really sad. When you again go back a few generations, and I'm going back to my grandfather's generation to give you an idea. One of my grandfathers was born in the late 1800s. The other grandfather was born in 1911. I think the other one was 1894 or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, both were very were living in a time. I mean, one grandfather was living in a time where electricity wasn't common. Yeah, so they would have candles and petroleum lights at home. When my second grandfather grew up, electricity was more common in the towns. But still, there was no media. There was no sort of radio. Only came up in the 30s. So that was when he was a young man. And television even later. So they've changed a lot. They've seen a lot of change. I mean, my grandfather, just to sort of illustrate this, who was born in the 1800s, he was born in an age where the majority of transport was done by horse and cart, by steam trains, and by boats, steamboats. When he died sort of sometime in the 80s. He was like almost 90 years old. When he died, he had seen men on the moon. He had seen space travel. He was born at a time where there was no, where there weren't any aeroplanes or anything like that, and he died at a time when it was quite common for ordinary people to travel, across the continent in an aeroplane. Okay, morality also changed. Now, when my grandfather was in his 20s, you just didn't sleep with a woman unless you were married to her. And I remember that my grandfather was ready to get married, and he had a job, and he was in his late 20s. And when he met my grandmother, they were married within a fortnight. Yeah, and that was just a done thing, and they slept together, and apparently they had a lot of, not apparently, they had a lot of children. They had 5 children, and apparently he was fairly active in that department. And the same with my other grandfather. My other grandfather, similar story. He got together with a woman, had a bit of an affair. Not an affair. I mean, they were both unmarried, but so you couldn't call it an affair. But they were getting very close, and in the end, they had to marry very quickly. And that was a common thing. There was some sort of this was a rule. Pretty much everybody messed up. Not everybody, but a lot of people messed up with the rule. But if you messed up and you bore the consequence, and you had respect and honor for the other person as well. You got married, and you joined your lives together, and you made the best of it. It doesn't happen like that today, and it's not necessarily for the better. It's pretty normal for a young man. I'm referring to a young man to have lots of partners before they settle down and get married, and I think the problem is that. That because of this, lifestyle, that the bonding between two people and sticking together doesn't work very well, because people have been too, how shall I say, too promiscuous in their time, and I think later relationships suffer, relationships which are meant to be for life. They suffer tremendously under this strain, under the strain of prior experience and prior experimentation. Okay, so what does what does it say? What is Solomon talking about? Most likely Solomon. We are back on wisdom, and we are back on the law and commands, and then I remember. I mean, I was a young man as well, and you were almost programmed to, you looked at a woman and you longed for, getting married or getting a girlfriend. I became a Christian when I was fairly young, so for me it was clear to do the right thing, or trying to do the right thing. Doesn't mean that I managed to do it. I'm just as weak as anybody else, but I tried. Yeah, I tried. So people who haven't got this moral background, for them it's just normal to stray and to go around and to to sleep around with the consequence that comes with it, like transmitted diseases and so on. Okay, so here we go. The first one is commandment is a lamp and the law is a light. So that's really what it's there for. Yeah? God has given you a code and a guide, and it should be a moral guideline. It should be the lamp for your life. And again, if you read the New Testament and you get a good idea of how we should live. If you go to the Old Testament, you've got obviously the Jewish Tanakh, you've got the Torah, and you've got lots of rules and regulations in there. And it gives you a guideline, but there's a lot of stuff which doesn't apply. And when you look at the law, there's the divine law. This is the way how to deal with God. There is moral law, and then there's also civil law. Civil law, in a lot of aspects, that cannot apply to us. Yeah? Moral law is pretty much valid. Yeah? Like the Ten Commandments, not to steal, not to be envious, not to be greedy, not to, give false witness, not to, to put God first, not to have idols in your life, like stuff other than God. So all this is valid, and it's good, and it can organize human society in a functional way. So it is important. Okay, so this is why the law is there. It's important. We need the law to, not to start being judge and jury with everybody's life, but we need it for ourselves as some sort of guideline, as a moral compass to know where we are going. And it says here, it keeps you from the evil woman. And the evil woman, we can see, is flattery. It's a big thing. She flatters you, and it's a lot of stuff you can do with flattery. If you stroke somebody's ego, you can manipulate them very easily if they fall for it. And that's important as well. So when we talk about flattery, if people flatter you, don't listen to it. That's what I say. Be self-critical. I mean, not to the point of self-destruction, but be sober. Have a sober judgment about yourself. It's very difficult. It's easy to judge others, but self-judgment is difficult. Don't be proud or haughty. But on the other side, don't be completely downtrodden and distraught. But you need to be somewhere in the middle. You need to have a good self-awareness and be sober-minded about yourself. Will we get it right? The answer is, I'm sure we won't. We will always be either too far on one side or too far on the other side. But we should try. We should try. And we should, if you're a Christian, you've got the Holy Spirit in your life, and you should come before God and really seek God on also the ways where you can do better and the ways where things are going wrong, to instruct you on that. And it works. It will happen. We've got the next one here, and this is especially when you are young. And I remember my thing: do not lust after her beauty in your heart. This is a man thing. Yeah? If a man sees a beautiful woman, and I think most of you, if you are male, you would probably agree, it is very hard not to look at her. It's very hard not to try to engage with her. And sometimes we are just put back because we think we are in a different league. We are somewhere in the bottom league, and this woman is sort of top league material, and we can't go anywhere near her. And women know this. Yeah? A good-looking woman knows she's good-looking, not always, but very often, and they can use their looks to manipulate others, especially men, and we fall for it all the time. It says the next one here, and it's quite interesting. not let her take you with her eyelids. What does this all mean? And it's, I mean, I've seen it myself, and I've been through it myself. It's the whole, eye contact thing. When you look into somebody's eyes, you can, I mean, people said, and I've heard this some time ago, that a huge um, part of communication between people is non-verbal. They put a figure on it, but you can put a figure on anything, I guess. But it was something like, 80% of communication is non-verbal. When you look at somebody, you look at the face, you look at the body posture, the way the hands are, the eyes, and other things. You can pick up straight away of whether it's a friend or foe, of whether somebody wants to harm you or wants to help you. Um, but also, I mean, with women can talk with their eyes, and I mean, everybody amongst you who's married, you know that your wife can probably talk to you with her eyes and tell you, give you instructions across the table without saying a single word, and you know exactly what she means and what is going on. Um, I've experienced it myself. And I've heard a lot of other people who say the same thing. Men say the same thing. That it's just like a look, and you know whether you're in favor or whether you're in trouble. And so the same, within the dating game, when a lady is looking for attention, she can play with her eyes, and you know that you are meant, and that there's something going on. In Russian, they've even got the expression "eyes glass" um, to give the eye or something, and it means as much as a woman trying to want attention from a man, or vice versa. For by means of a harlot, a man comes to a piece of bread, and another man's wife will hunt for the precious life. So we've got again the prostitute, the prostitute, or a harlot, like a woman who has a lot of men and doesn't charge for it. Um, it'll reduce him. It'll reduce him to a piece of bread. And the worst thing is if you've then got a jealous husband, he might go after you, and you won't feel safe anymore because you've done wrong. You've cheated a man from his relationship with his wife. And it says here, can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes are not burned? Makes sense. If you play with fire, you get burned. Don't play with fire, you won't get burned. Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? So is he who goes after his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. Again, just bear this in mind. Sometimes it's hard. If you see, and this is how we men operate. If you see a beautiful woman, and you lust after her, and I mean, Peter is very pragmatic, and I think it's Peter. And anyway, he talks about that we should um, not abandon our natural relations with our spouses. So that's the wife with the husband and the husband with the wife. But we should get together regularly so that we will not be tempted by the devil. Very pragmatic, straightforward rule. And then only for prayer, separate ourselves for a bit, to focus on God and seek God and not be too carnally minded, I guess. That's where it comes from. So it's just a common sense thing. If you live in a relationship, if you are married, give to your husband the attention due to him, and if you are a husband, give to your wife the attention due to her. Ultimately, if your partner is happy, it'll make you happy as well. If you neglect your partner, you're going to suffer for it as well, in one way or the other. So it's hard. It's not easy living in a married relationship. Um, but and it's not easily said when it's easy for me to sit behind a microphone and to talk about this. I know how difficult it is to live together with somebody else. Why? Partly because we are all sinners. I'm a sinner. You are a sinner. Your partner is a sinner, and we have to cope somehow. And there's no perfection on the other side. And if there was perfection on the other side, as soon as we come into the equation, that perfection is gone anyway. So we are dealing with complex issues, but we need to make the best of it. One key is forgiveness. You always need to be ready to forgive. You need to live in the expectation that, number one, you will make mistakes, and you need to forgive yourself. Other people will make mistakes towards you, especially those who are closest to you, like your wife, your children, your parents, your husband. Yeah. And you need to be ready to forgive. And that is not easy at times. It's not easy, but you need to be ready to do this and try to do this from the bottom of your heart. And if you can't do it from the bottom of your heart, it's time to do some neology. And with neology, I mean, go down on your knees and seek God to help you, to give you a spirit of forgiveness and to soften your heart so that you can reconcile as best as possible. Okay, anyway, by harlot, the result is you reduce yourself to a piece of bread. It's a problem. So let's have a look. And then we have like a little bit of a detour in the text, and it's about a thief. You should not despise a thief when he steals, when he's hungry. And again, it's something to bear in mind. So if I think in German they use this term Mundraub. So if you were hungry and you ate something to satisfy your hunger, that was sort of almost tolerated, in years gone by. But still, if he's caught, he needs to pay for it. He shouldn't be getting away from, with it, to steal, to satisfy his stomach. It's interesting as well. I see some stuff that's going on in California, where you can steal up to $1,000 and you won't get prosecuted. And people know this, and because they don't enforce the law anymore, people think they've just got like a carte blanche. They can go into a shop and take things out of the shop, providing it's below the value of $1,000. It's really bad. The result is that a lot of businesses have left. I think San Francisco is one of those cities. A lot of businesses have left San Francisco because they were just robbed all day long, and they couldn't keep up with this, and it didn't make any sense. The problem is that the decent and honest communities who live in the area, they won't have the facilities anymore to shop, but they probably have to go outside, eventually outside San Francisco, unless these rules change, to go to a place where they can buy things for everyday life. Okay, so it's sort of put in here. So people do wrong, sometimes because of need, urges, hunger. But if he's caught, he needs to do recompense. It's a big question. What is this statement doing in the middle of the discourse on adultery? Is it, I don't know, probably taking it too far, that sometimes we do stupid things, and we shouldn't despise people if they do stupid things, even in this department. But if they are caught, they need to be held to account. Okay, we go on. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He who does it destroys his own soul. He shall get a wound, and dishonor and shame will not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not take any ransom, nor will he be willing if you multiply the gifts. Okay, this talks about another man's wife. If you take another man's wife here, you will be in trouble. You will be in trouble. You shouldn't be doing this. And it's a rule of honor anyway. You don't tread on another man's territory. You live with respect. You respect your fellow citizen and your fellow man. And maybe for women in the same thing. You don't steal another man's husband, another woman's husband. You don't steal another woman's husband, but you respect boundaries and you say, okay, this is how far I can go, and I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going to take this man away from her. That's her man. She's got to keep it, and you respect it. Okay, let's move on with the discourse on adultery. We are in chapter 7 now. And again, we are back on wisdom. Keep the commandments, keep them with you. It talks about his sons. And So that's about wisdom. Wisdom is very important, and it's there to keep you from the strange woman, from the stranger who flatters with her words. Back on flattery, so we talked about this. And then we get the scenario. So he looked through the lattice of his window. So he looked through the window and he saw a simple guy, and he was a young man. And a young man with no understanding, passing through the street near a corner, and he went the way to a house in the twilight, in the evening, and the dark of the night. And behold, a woman met him with a dress of a harlot and guarded her heart. So basically, a dress of a harlot. The woman was dressed up, she was in seductive clothing. And she went for this young man. And and I'm going to tell you a story in a minute of something, somebody I've met. And I've seen sort of his life, and it's a really sad story when you look at this. Anyway, she seduced him. She had like lots of pleasant words, and everything was nice. And she tickled his ego, and she talked about what they're going to do, and that they're going to have a night of passion, and everything is wonderful, and her husband is not there, and she'll just take him. And he went, and the description is he goes after her immediately, like an ox goes to the slaughter, or like a fool to the correction of the stocks. Right. I tell you a story, and I think it's pretty much coming to the end of this talk as well, but I met a friend of mine, an elderly friend, and he had 2 kids. And I was a young man myself, and he was sort of a bit older than me. And anyway, it was a really, really sad story. The guy, when he was young, and I don't know the exact age, he was probably 16, 17, 18 or something, he got seduced by an elderly woman. So she was probably in her late 30s or 40s. So there was quite a bit of an age gap between them. And she was just lonely, I assume, and she did the eye thing, and he fell for it, and he went with her, and he moved in with her. And obviously they had a lot of activities of the horizontal nature. And and anyway, the woman was quite experienced, divorced. I assume there's a lot of. I try to remember the story as I was told, but it did something to this young man. And the young man, after he had this affair with this elderly woman, and all she wanted is probably a little bit of attention, and there was nothing serious. She would just toss him away at a later stage. And then this young man, because he got drugged and sucked into this relationship, he became very promiscuous. After that, he had loads and loads of relationships, basically one after the other. Eventually got married, and he had 3 kids, and then the whole thing broke apart after the 3 kids were there. And he started having more relationships with other people. And it was just a pattern in his life which was repeating. So he hooked up with another woman, and did all the nice things, the compliments, the flattery, and everything else. Then they moved together, and then they stayed together for a couple of years, and he got bored, and he started cheating on his partner. The woman got really upset, and then it went on. He moved on to the next one, and it just became a pattern. I'm not sure, I've lost track of them many years ago. I'm not sure how his life panned out. He was a little bit older than me. But it was really, really sad to see, and it was just the cost. He never regained his grounding. When you met the guy, he was just a nice guy. If you met him on the street, you had a bit of a chat with him. He was just a nice guy. Everything was fine. He was okay, but he had this issue in his life that he couldn't hold down a stable relationship, and everything just went down very quickly. And there was this pattern of moving on to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Okay, I'm going to close on this. What can we learn from this chapter? From this chapter, number 1 is it's dangerous. If you see an adulteress as a young man, especially, try to keep away from her. She's not gonna enhance your life in any way whatsoever. You're not going to be better for the experience you have gained. You will be brokenhearted, especially when she chucks you away or she places her eyes on the next guy. Um, she will suck the living light, or the living, yeah, the daylight out of you, um, and the price is very high to pay. Especially later when you try to build your own family, to be faithful and loyal to the lady of your life. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. It's a lot more difficult, and you need a lot of healing. I mean, there's always restoration and reconciliation available within the kingdom of God, and God can heal the wounds you have incurred on yourself in going down this path. But again, it's not easy. And if you like an easy life, then stay away from that sort of lifestyle. If you're a woman, don't give it away too easy. Um, don't become a harlot or an adulteress. Be faithful to your man. Don't entice another woman's man. Respect the boundaries. The same for men as well. Don't go after another man's woman. Respect the boundaries. Don't tread on another man's territory, and leave him alone. Leave him to it, even if things don't seem right or whatever. You need to obviously put God first in your life, and this is when you take this interpretation a little bit out of its context. Um, Sin is very seductive. There's no question about it. But the result is bitter, and the result is death and hell. We need to stay away from it. We need to stay on the straight and narrow path God has put in front of us. Will we fail? For sure, we will. And I'm just not saying this as a defeatist or whatever, but more as a realist. We will fail on many levels. It could be just a microscopic level. It could be a macroscopic level. It could be in a tiny thing. It could be in a big thing. The biggest faults I've had in my life when I felt spiritually just sorted, spot on, at the top of the world. Everything was fine. Everything was good. I knew what I was doing. I knew things were going right, and then it hit me, and I fell, and it was painful. So never be conceited. Never think of yourself that you are in a position where you are sorted and everything is okay. Always guard your ways. Commit your ways unto the Lord, and He will make them straight. He will make them right. Let the Word of God be a light to your path and a lamp to your feet, so you know where you are going, and you also know the general direction of where you will be heading towards. So this is very, very important. Right, the last thing I'm going to say, you are the man who is treaded on a wrong path, who has committed adultery with another man's wife, who's been going to prostitutes. You need to seek God. You need to seek the instruction of the Holy Spirit. You need to seek God. You need to seek healing for your soul. You need to forgive those who have seduced you. And you need to stay away from that type of temptation to the best of your ability. Very, very important. If you are the harlot, same thing. You have to come to a point of repentance in your life. You have to come to a point of surrendering this lifestyle to the feet of the cross and to be cleansed by the blood of Christ. How can you be cleansed by the blood of Christ? That is through faith. You put your faith in Jesus, that He has died for your sins, and that His blood has been shed for your sins, and that it is good enough to clean you from all the filth and the bad things you've done in your life. And it's the same for the man as well. So this is really the message which comes out of here. It is just a description of the journey of a young man, not necessarily of a young man, maybe an elderly as well, but of stuff that can go wrong in life, and that will ultimately destroy you. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this point. Thank you very much for listening. Let's have a look at the next chapter. talks about. The blessings of wisdom. It's a little bit more positive. But again, very, very important. Very important to have this wisdom. And we're going to look at this. And it is important. I mean, my thinking is Proverbs. If you are a young Christian, or even, a more mature Christian, you should, put your head into the book every now and then and look at those verses and take them in. Okay, thank you very much for listening. You're listening to Michael here at Seismic Radio, Crusader Radio, BPN Radio, and we're going to carry on this talk through the whole book of Proverbs. So the next talk soon to come, possibly later today or tomorrow. God bless and bye-bye from Michael here at Seismic Radio.